Most superhero games give you all the power. You are, of course, the hero of the story. With Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Eidos Montreal is taking a different approach, putting you into a superhero team with the focus on making you feel like part of the group. You can't handle everything on your own, but it's remarkable how, through the teamwork mechanics within the game, you quickly start to feel like you can work together with the other Guardians to stop any obstacle. We recently got a chance to play a chapter of Guardians of the Galaxy, which showed off some of how you'll interact with the other members of the team as the story unfolds, and how you'll act as the Guardians' leader on the battlefield. If you want to see more Guardians coverage from GameSpot, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. The portion we played takes place on a Nova Corps station called The Rock, where the Guardians had to pay a fine in order to get the interstellar fuzz off their backs. It starts in typical Guardians fashion. The team doesn't agree on the best course of action. Gamora thinks it's a good idea to settle up on the fine, even though it's costly, so the Guardians won't have to keep looking over their shoulders. Rocket, on the other hand, wants to just make a run for it and keep the cash. As Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, you agree with Gamora. Even before you take off, though, you have the opportunity to talk to the other members of the squad. That includes a quick heart-to-heart with Rocket to convince him that his opinion is valued among the Guardians, and a chance to learn about Gamora's secret hobby, collecting dolls. Soon after landing at the Rock, the Guardians quickly start to suspect that something is wrong. None of the space bureaucrats are at their posts, and the station appears to be empty, so there's no one to pay the fine to. The group decides to head further into the station, but to do that, you need Rocket to put his engineering skills to work to help open some doors. That highlights the Guardian request system. When you need someone else on the team to do something, you can ask them for help, but they may not always just follow orders. In this case, you need Rocket to get the doors open, but he's not thrilled about having to crawl through ducts and mess with wires. There's also a puzzle that needs solving, and using Quill's special visor, you can have a look around the room to complete the circuit connections that power the door. You can also power up a vending machine to help Drax grab a drink, and you can accidentally power up a defective console that blows up almost in Gamora's face, causing her to yell at you for your carelessness. All of those little moments are optional, but they each trigger more dialogue among the Guardians that continues to develop their characters and adds more humor to the goings-on. Later, when you hit another locked door that requires Rocket's expertise, he straight up refuses to open it, which demonstrates why Eidos is calling it the Guardian request system. Rocket is tired of wandering around the station looking for people, and unless Quill agrees that he's not going to lead them through the entire rock, Rocket won't open any more doors for the group. With the request system, you can also try to ask the other Guardians for assistance. Since they don't have the expertise, they instead will weigh in on the situation, leading to some fun jokes like Drax suggesting you negotiate with the rodent. Rocket eventually agrees to open the door, but only after Quill agrees to end the search after just one more room. That one room, of course, is the turning point of the level, when you find a Nova Corps helmet and are able to listen into local communications. Here, you start to get a sense of what's going on when you hear some weird religious chatter between the Nova Troopers, and apparently, they're searching for someone. This also presents one of the major choice moments in the level, where you can decide to either speak up and ask the Nova Corps folks what's going on, or remain silent. On our first playthrough in the chapter, we stayed silent, and through the next door we found an elevator with a glass wall. Through it, the Guardians watched as some Nova Corps soldiers, with weird purple halos of energy around their heads, executed some of their comrades. Seems like some kind of cultish mind control situation is happening, and since we didn't make our presence known on the radio, the Guardians were able to sneak into the room and take the cultists by surprise. That kicked off combat for the first time, where we got a sense of how teamwork permeates all levels of the game. Quill on his own isn't a particularly strong fighter. He carries a couple of guns and sports his signature jet boots, allowing you to run or fly around the battlefield to hit different targets or drop into cover. But while Quill's guns do some damage, and he can fight hand-to-hand, neither is always super effective against all enemies. Luckily, Quill's guns have elemental add-ons that give you different benefits. In the demo, we had access to an ice element that allowed Quill to freeze enemies, which made them easy targets for the other Guardians. In combat, the rest of your team will take on enemies on their own, with each fighting in their own way. Rocket sports an arsenal of heavy weapons, Groot ties enemies up with his roots, and Drax and Gamora close the distance to fight with melee weapons or hand-to-hand. But you can still use the Guardian request system here. where you can call on each member of the team to use specific abilities on individual targets. So freezing a tough enemy with Quill's guns allows you to then call on Drax to hit that enemy with a big attack, doing massive damage. Gamora's assassin abilities are great for taking out distant snipers, while Groot can tie up multiple enemies with his vines and briefly take them out of the battle. Rocket has a powerful grenade that's great for damaging several enemies at once. So alone, none of the Guardians are particularly strong or suited for every situation, but together, they're extremely formidable. As Quill, it's up to you to give orders in the fight, paying attention to what threats are the priority and knowing which Guardians can best deal with them. The demo quickly started mixing tougher enemies with the grunts as we fought our way through them, including a big guy who sported an energy shield that made him tough to shoot. Using Groot or Drax to distract that enemy was key, allowing Quill to flank him to avoid the shield. Blasts from the freeze gun left the enemy vulnerable so Gamora could get in and do some big damage, and if you attacked the enemy in the back, you could destroy the shield generator, taking away its defensive advantage. If the Guardians are hurt or caught in a trap, like the electric mines the shield enemy would sometimes send out, it was up to Quill to help them or break them free. Leave the Guardians on their own too long, and they start to go down, like squad mates in games such as Gears of War, requiring you to revive them. If you're winning the fight and playing effectively though, the game rewards you with a sort of combo tracker that shows just how well you're synergizing with the Guardians, and that boosts your experience point gains. Eventually, you can initiate a momentary boost called the Huddle, which also charges on a timer. The Huddle pauses the action and brings the Guardians to Quill for a quick pep talk, but you have to make sure you're paying attention to your squad in order to effectively pump them up. The different members of your team will talk about how the fight is going using keywords that hang on your screen. You then have two options for your response, and you need to pick the pep talk response that's right for the situation. If the Guardians are demoralized, you can reiterate that the group is capable of taking on anything when they work together. If they're fighting over who's kicking more ass, you can implore them not to get cocky and to support each other so everyone can kick even more ass. The Huddle is a great emergency measure because it automatically revives anyone on the team who is downed, even if you pick the wrong answer. But if you pick the right one, the Guardians are energized by Quill's coaching, and everyone gets a momentary damage boost when they get back into the fight. It's another way the game emphasizes the team over the individual and reiterates that you're a key part of the group. Playing through the demo a second time also showed how choices can impact combat encounters. If you choose to talk to the Nova Corps through the helmet, a group of cultists will come looking for you, and you lose the element of surprise when they show up, forcing you into a fight. In the next scene, when you're in the elevator, the cultist enemies know you're coming and they open fire on the glass window. So instead of getting the drop on enemies, Drax literally leaps out of the elevator and starts wailing on people. Quill's jet boots allow him to follow, but the rest of the team can't just jump down 3 stories. So the first part of the fight is just Quill and Drax while you wait for the other Guardians to catch up. And in order to make it through, you really have to step up your game as a leader. A few moments later, the rest of the team joins the battle and their banter reflects how you did. You might hear Rocket remark that the team owes Drax a beer for ripping through the enemy Nova Corps if you do well in the fight. So ultimately, your choices might lead to the same places, it seems, but not necessarily in the same way. While your decisions with the Guardians and how you treat them might influence how the story unfolds and their relationships with you, Eidos Montreal noted that they won't affect combat. Rocket might complain about opening a door because you haven't been listening to him throughout a mission, but that doesn't mean he's going to refuse orders while you're in combat. Eidos said it didn't want players to feel penalized by their choices in combat, so the team will always fight to their fullest when it counts. But in between battles, the interpersonal dynamics come through, and the Guardians pay attention to your choices, like whether you risked speaking on the Nova Corps radio or stayed quiet. We also got a sense of how progression will work in Guardians of the Galaxy. Throughout the level, you can find supplies on the ground to collect, specifically 2 different kinds of materials. Gathering those materials allows you to upgrade Quill's gear at workbenches, unlocking new abilities for yourself like boosts for your boots or upgrades for your guns and your scanner that can give you information about enemies. Fighting well also earns you experience points you can spend on any of the Guardians to unlock new abilities. You can add to Quill's arsenal of moves, like adding the ability to hover over the battlefield to get better sight lines on enemies, or throw more options to the rest of the Guardians for when you use the request system in a fight. Each of the moves has different stats, so you can see how much each attack will damage enemies how many people it can target, how long it will make your cooldown timer last, and how much it contributes to filling up enemies' stagger meters, which can stun them and leave them open to more attacks. Knowing what abilities are good in which situations is essential to winning fights, and the better job you do synergizing each team member's moves, the more experience you earn to buy new abilities. The demo ended soon after a few more big fights with various enemies requiring changes in tactics in order to deal with each one. The team finally made their way back to their ship, with the Guardians constantly bantering and joking the whole way through. Through combat, character moments between fights, and the decision points throughout the demo, it was remarkable how much Guardians of the Galaxy captures the feeling of being a member of a team, even if the rest of the team is controlled by AI. It all suggests that Guardians of the Galaxy is a superhero game that's not going to feel like other superhero games, but it does a great job of capturing the humor, dysfunction, and camaraderie that makes the Guardians of the Galaxy such a great group of characters.
Chew, move over. What are you looking at?
Oh no, you ain't chewing through any more of my ship.
My ship!
Shoo, flock off!